What is up, watch fam? Happy Friday, and welcome to this week's collection review. I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and today we're going to be diving into a beautiful collection of Rolexes, JLCs, and more. So let's do it. All right, before we get into today's episode, we'll do a quick wristwatch check. I am wearing a beautiful Breitling Super Ocean Heritage in blue. I'm actually loving this watch. I'm not a modern watch guy, definitely. Vintage is my jam, but this watch has some serious significance. I'm enjoying the hell out of wearing it. So let's jump into this collection review of a T&H fan named Giovanni. He's from Germany. He's got some really, really great taste, both aesthetically and mechanically. So number one, Giovanni's first watch was his grandfather's Omega Seamaster. The watch was cased in gold, featured a black dial, and the automatic 562 movement. I'm going to actually read directly from Giovanni's email what this watch means to him, because I can't really do the description justice on my own. My grandfather received it as a retirement gift from the company in Switzerland he had worked for over 40 years, and he eventually passed it to me before he died in 1997. On the back of the watch, his name is engraved, which happens to also be my name, Giovanni. This is the watch that will always stay with me, even if I will be forced to sell everything. I will eventually pass it to my first grandchild. This watch reminds me of the love, pain, and sacrifice are linked together. One without the other two would be worthless and meaningless. And it's funny, first of all, it's just so well put, and it really brings watches to the level that I like to talk about watches on, on the really emotional level. Our phones have more applications, our phones have more capabilities, they're quicker, they're more easily legible, they're more accurate, so it's about, to me, craftsmanship, design, and the meaning. I don't think my grandson or daughter will ever look at my iPhone, and say, that was, grandpa's, most prized possession. But when they look at my Datejust, for instance, they can say that's the watch that started Theo and Harris. They can say that's the watch that made grandpa do what he loved forever. And that's why daddy did what he loved. And that's why I do what so like that to me is why watches are so important. And that's exactly what Giovanni's kind of talking about here. Not the same exact instance, but the capability of the meaning a watch can hold, it's incredible. So cheers to you, Giovanni, for having such a beautifully meaningful watch. But let's move into the collection that you've curated yourself. First, a beautiful Heuer Monaco, a reissue of really one of my favorite chronographs in history. I hear that it doesn't wear all that well. I hear it's a little bit large and awkward, but from a design and historical point of view, I absolutely love it. I think that it's so unique and interesting. I love that the variation that you have is the left crown model. I think this watch represents a ton of value on the secondhand market because so many modern Heuers are underappreciated, or flat out unappreciated. So props on this watch. Next, you moved into JLC, two reversos. One tribute to 1931, which I think is one of the most beautiful and charming watches JLC has produced, or really almost any watch manufacturer has produced in a very long time. We talked about this watch on Liquor Run, which I definitely recommend you guys watch after. The link will be in the description. My dad and I jumped into the history of it and the meaning of the reverso altogether. But one of the things we talked about and touched upon is how upset I am that the watch doesn't really fit me very well. The reverso tribute to 1931, although it has beautifully thin proportions, has actually quite long, and it hangs off of my wrist. So even though I would almost do anything to own and wear that watch, it would never really look great on me. So that is something that I'm very bitter about as I read your email. And your second is the Grand Date 8-Day Power Reserve, another really, really interesting and refined JLC reverso. Definitely very different than the Heritage model, looks nothing really like the 1931, which is probably my favorite. This one has some really beautiful proportion on the dial, which I think is so impressive because of how really technically busy it is. It's got so much going on, and I think the JLC still managed to balance it, which, is funky and hard. Like, major props. The watch doesn't look necessarily clean and simple, but it manages to fit in quite a lot of complication into a pretty small package. So props to you for grabbing it. You have my full support on this one. Next, you've got a black, beautiful, modern Submariner. It's a watch that in the photos I never really appreciate. Then when I see one in person, I can't stop looking at it. My friend John from Engraved on Instagram has a beautiful Rolex Submariner, and you know, he views it as such oh, it's just a sub, you know, even though he doesn't like have other watches, like that's his watch and he loves it. But when he's around me, because I'm always wearing different kinds of stuff, he's like, oh no, like it's just my sub, you know. Whereas when I see it, I'm always astonished by how beautiful it is. Is it true to Submariner heritage? Maybe not. It's a little bit more blingy than it is, you know, vintage tool-y, but it's not a vintage tool watch. You know, it's a modern Rolex. You know, it carries the fundamental design principles, I suppose, but I feel like the function is very different than its original intention. That being said, that's not a bad thing. I think that for a vintage lover, it's a little bit funky, but for a Rolex Submariner, I think it's a big improvement from its predecessors. So great piece. Next is a watch that I find very interesting. It's a compromise. You originally wanted a 16760, which is called the Sophia Loren, or the Fat Lady. And I don't know why it's called both of those things, because Sophia Loren definitely wasn't, you know, a quote-unquote fat lady. But because you, one, couldn't find one, and two, didn't necessarily want to go for the budget on a 16760, which is a rare and expensive, you know, oddball vintage Rolex, you went for this, which is a beautiful Coke GMT from 1999. I'm definitely a Pepsi fan. I'm in the Pepsi camp. I am. But I think that because my eye is so accustomed now to Pepsi, seeing Coke was kind of cool. You know, it was a little bit funkier, I guess. It's definitely not the classic Rolex GMT style, because the GMT was a, you know, blue and red watch, but I really do like it, I guess. What an odd little trivial difference for Rolex to make. You know, it almost doesn't make sense that they would edit that little bezel color, because it's kind of created two camps of GMT lovers, you know, the Coke guys and the Pepsi guys. So that's it. That's your collection. It's a really well curated collection. Mainstream, technically, but I don't view it as boring at all. These are major brands, they're major watches within those brands, and yet still, I feel like there's some character there. Pursuing that, I think that your next watch, which you're considering, should be, in fact, your next watch. The Geophysic by Jaeger-LeCoultre, a wonderfully interesting re-edition, a watch that has been brought up to modern specifications in size and in movement and in design to many respects, but a watch that pays wonderful respect to a truly collectible and under-the-radar vintage tool watch. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. Wearing the Geophysic, in my opinion, is a statement that, yes, I am a watch geek. Can you wear a Submariner and love watches? Of course you can. But those two things aren't necessarily, you know, one. When you're wearing a Geophysic, the odds are a true watch geek will approach you and say, hey man, nice watch. Because he's going to be confident in your reaction, in like the, hey, yes, you know what this is. We can talk now. It's like a secret handshake, you know, wearing this seemingly quartz, you know, cheap watch that truly is a absolutely useless complication. Something that, at least in my opinion, is almost endlessly cool. Go for it, man, definitely. You seem to be very passionate about it, and I absolutely agree with and support you. Thank you guys so much for watching this collection review. It was my pleasure to take a look, Giovanni. Congratulations on all your watches so far. Keep on collecting. And thank you guys for watching.